Welcome to Tech Primers. In this video, we are going to see what is Spring Cloud Sleuth. So Spring Cloud Sleuth is an implementation of distributed tracing solution which Spring Cloud provides. So if you're familiar with the microservices design pattern, right? So it is very difficult to trace the logs across microservices. So Spring is solving that solution using the Spring Cloud Sleuth. So if you're familiar with ZipKin, HTrace or Dapper, so it is almost similar to that. The only advantage which Spring Cloud Sleuth provides is you don't have to write any code for it. You just need to add the dependencies into your code and it takes care of the traceability automatically. So I'll show you a demo of how this works. And in the next video, we can see how to implement that using the code. So let's see the Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So this is my deployment. So I use the Pivotal web services for the deployment. So if you are not familiar with Pivotal's Cloud Foundry deployment, so you can check my other videos. I have already done some videos on that. So I have two applications. One is called the users client, one is called the user service. So the user service is going to be having the data. So user client will do a call to the user service and get the data back. Okay, right now I don't have any data, so it will be empty. So I'm going to show you how to see the logs across these microservices. Okay, so I have two consoles here. So this is the console for the users client and this is the console for the user service. So these two are the logs. So I don't have any central place where the logs are streamed. Right now I'm using the Pivotal's log aggregator. So that is what you see here. So I'm going to show in two different tabs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the URL called users/all. It is going to, this URL is going to hit the user service and get the response back. So let's see what happens. So it got empty response. So when we hit the user/all, so it did a call. If you see here, this is the client side logs. So it adds something called trace ID and the span ID. So if you see here, this is the trace ID, span ID is also the same. Let's go to the service side, the user service, and see if the trace ID is present. So if you see here, the trace ID has come here. So the same trace ID is present in both the services. However, there is something else called span ID. So I'll cover that a little bit later. So if you see here, so the client has got the trace ID, the same trace ID is now passed on to the server side as well, so that you can trace across the microservices. So Spring Cloud Sleuth uses the concept of trace ID and span ID. So trace ID is for tracing a particular request from end to end. Let's say you are traversing through 4 or 5 microservices. So in that case, the trace ID will be helpful. However, span ID will be helpful when you are tracing across a particular request. So across a microservice. So the span ID will be specific to a microservice. So if you want to trace the logs in that particular microservice, span ID will be used. And if you want to trace the logs across microservices, then the trace ID will be useful. So span ID is within the microservice, trace ID is across microservices. Okay, so that is how Spring Cloud Sleuth uses it. So how does it send the trace ID and span IDs? It sets these trace ID and span ID in the header. So if you see in the logs, you can see the trace ID and span ID being set. So if you see here, this is how it is set. So that the logs can just pull that and then display it. So that is how Spring Cloud Sleuth does the distributed tracing. Okay, so same way if you go to, so how do you add the dependencies? You just add the dependency called sleuth. So it takes care of adding these span ID and trace ID automatically. So that we will see in the next video. So that's it for this video. Meet you again in the next video. Thank you.